Harris has been making the rounds in the Midwest. Recently, she was in Wisconsin as well as Detroit, Michigan. And I want to start off with some rhetoric that she had about the war in Israel and Gaza and also Lebanon. And we're adding in Iran here as well, the conflict that is happening in the Middle East, the genocide that is happening in the Middle East, because I want to show you how Kamala Harris contradicts herself in one weekend. One weekend. We're going to start with this clip here. Thank you to James Zogby for this. This is Kamala Harris expressing some compassion, some compassion that she has for the Palestinian people. Listen to this.
So as I was saying, our Arab American community has deep and proud roots in the Detroit metro area, and I am very proud to have the support of Arab American leaders like Wayne County Deputy Executive Asad Turfi, and listen, I know this year has been very difficult, given the scale of death and destruction in Gaza, and given the civilian casualties and displacement in Lebanon. It is devastating, and now Sinwar's death can and must be a turning point. Everyone must seize this opportunity to finally end the war in Gaza, bring the hostages home, and end the suffering once and for all. And I continue to believe diplomacy is the answer to bringing lasting stability across the Israel-Lebanon border. And as Vice President, and with your help as President, I will do everything in my power to achieve these goals and work toward a future.
Okie dokie. So that was Kamala Harris there in Michigan over the weekend. She's been hitting up again those Midwestern states there that she needs to win, showing some compassion there for the Palestinian people. But we've seen this before. Number one, I will say that if she thinks that because Sinwar is now dead, that will end the conflict that is happening in the Middle East, then she is sadly mistaken. She has to be either delusional or just lying on purpose. I don't know. You guys pick which one you think that it could be, because the reality is killing those leaders, you basically have now made those leaders a martyr. And you have now, with everything that has happened to the people in the Middle East, whether it's through Hamas or another type of resistance, I could never see those people deciding, let's just lay over and let's just not resist anymore. In fact, I would argue you have probably now created a new generation of resistance, and rightfully so, because how dare you starve the people, occupy the people, oppress the people, kidnap the people, kidnap their children, burn their children, put them into prisons in Israeli prisons and torture their children. How dare you treat these people like they are nothing but animals? And if you think that because you killed one of the leaders that will stop any type of resistance, then you have not been paying attention to history, because history would tell us something different. Nevertheless, she says she was compassionate there. No? Compassion? I feel the compassion for the Palestinian people. Now, in the same weekend, after she made that speech, she also said this in Wisconsin, at the University of Wisconsin, Milwaukee, to a Palestinian supporter. Watch this.
Right now, I know what you're speaking of. I want the ceasefire.
But what about the genocide?
I want the war to end.
What about the genocide?
And I respect your right to speak, but I am speaking right now.
Yeah. There we go again. Now let's go back, because I want you to watch his demeanor, okay?
I know what you're speaking of. I want the ceasefire.
But what about the genocide?
I want the war to end.
What about the genocide, though?
What about the genocide, though? Does he seem hostile to you? Is he running up to try to knock her over or anything? No. Is he screaming? Is he violent in any way? No, he's not. Right? What about the genocide, though? Her response is, right now, I am speaking. She didn't learn anything from the time that she made that same statement in Michigan. Now she's making that statement in Wisconsin. So it's like I said before, it almost feels like they want to lose. Am I alone? Like you didn't learn from before? Stop it with the you are speaking. He's speaking right now. We're speaking right now. We have a voice too. As a matter of fact, when someone says, well, Kamala said she was speaking, so I was like, yeah, you go, girl. Woo! Yeah, speaking. Kamala said, I am speaking. You can push back on them by saying this. Well, we get to speak too. Do our voices not matter? We're the voters. When do we get to be heard? When do we get a chance to express how we feel? That's when you get the opportunity, when they're right in front of you. Now, for the people who come to me and say, oh, you could just write a strongly worded letter. Yeah, let's see how that goes. If the presidential candidate for the United States is standing right in front of you, that is your time to say what needs to be said. That's just simply how I see it. But watch what happens from here.
Respect your right to speak, but I am speaking right now.
Yeah.
So
2,000 people dead. 19,000 children are dead. 19,000 children are dead.
So you hear what he's saying? Over 2,000 Lebanese people dead, over 19,000 children dead. And I like I said, I think those numbers are higher than what they're reporting. But you see this? And someone yells out in the crowd, let that woman speak. You see this? It's the whole, that's why she can get away with the whole I am speaking thing. Because people are like, oh, she's a woman. Let that woman speak. But no, let other people speak too. Oh, we've been listening to you talk for years. Because we listen to you talk right now while you're campaigning for president. We listen to you talk when you were helping Joe Biden. We listen to you talk when you were running for president in 2020. We listen to you talk when you got into the Senate. We've been listening to you talk for a long time. It's time for you to listen to other people talking that are not celebrities. That's not Usher. That's not Lizzo. That's not Oprah. Not the people that came out to endorse you. But you can't really go to an event as a presidential candidate, especially right now, and expect people not to ask about the genocide. I don't know, man. I don't know.
So, listen, what he's talking about, it's real. And so that's not the subject that I came to discuss today, but it's real, and I respect his voice. So listen, here we are. You all.
It's real. I respect his voice, but I am speaking. It's real. I respect his voice, but let's get him the hell up out of here. It's real. I respect his voice, but let's move on to another subject.
Have the right and the ability to have opportunity available to you at each step of the way.
Now let's move on and let's talk about opportunity. You know who doesn't have opportunity? People in Gaza. Apparently people in Lebanon right now too. People in the West Bank. And it just like drives me crazy. Like when I think about it, how do you go from that topic to, listen, you all have an opportunity? Like, how do you go from talking about people, you know, just the genocide to let's talk about the opportunities you guys have here in America? Now we will move on because there's more, right? So, because that's not it, folks. That is not it. Then there is more. Because all weekend, like I said, she has been dancing around this issue, saying one thing in one state, another thing in another state. And then you're going to see here's her trying to be, so what, some called compassionate again. And she says Kamala Harris was asked just now whether she might lose the election because of the war in Gaza. So does everybody hear this? Rather, she will lose the election because of the war in Gaza. Listen to her response.
How risky is it that you could lose the election?
Well, it is undeniable that it is something that everyone is aware of what is happening there. I speak publicly all the time about the fact that there are so many tragic stories coming from Gaza, and of course, the first in this phase of everything that has happened, the first most tragic story is October 7th.
Pause. Let's back up again, and we're going to show you what she does wrong here. Watch this.
How risky is it that you could lose the election?
Well, it is undeniable that it is something that everyone is aware of what is happening there. I speak publicly all the time about the fact that there are so many tragic stories coming from Gaza, and of course, the first in this phase of everything that has happened, the first most tragic story is October 7th.
Okay, first problem. There are so many tragic stories that are coming out of Gaza. Great. What stories? What are some of the stories that are coming out of Gaza, Kamala? How come you don't talk about it? That was a perfect opportunity for her to talk about what is happening in Gaza. How come you don't mention that they were starving people and they haven't let food in since October 2nd? How about you? How did you mention that? How did you mention all the kids that have been dead? How about you mention all these videos that people see everywhere of kids' bodies like torn in half? How about the camps, the refugee camp tents that were set on fire? How don't you bring up any of these stories that you just mentioned? Huh? Instead, what she does is she proceeds to go back into, let me talk about how bad it was for Israel. So she pushes the story back to October 7th. Now, the question, I believe, was, are you concerned that you may not win because of Gaza? Perfect opportunity for Kamala Harris to say, you know what? Let's talk about what's happening in Gaza. Here are some of the stories that are coming out of Gaza. And there are a number of things she could have mentioned. And also a number of things that she could have mentioned what happened in Lebanon with the walkie-talkie explosions. She could talk about that, about Israel bombing crowded streets in Beirut. She could talk about that. She also could have talked about what's happening in the West Bank of Israel stealing homes from Palestinian people, the largest land theft that we have seen in the Middle East. There, I can give you a number of examples that she could have started to talk about, but what does she do? She proceeds to, let's talk about how bad it was for Israel. And in order to do that, you got to go back to October 7th. And she's not going to mention anything that happened before October 7th to the Palestinian people. That's on purpose. So it's like, when someone comes to you and they say, aren't you concerned about losing because of Gaza? They're talking about people who are oppressed. They're talking about people that are occupied. And for you to divert the attention away from the people that are being oppressed and occupied back to the people who are the occupiers and the oppressors, that says a lot about you. And yes, that is doing the bidding of white supremacy. Oh man, those damn slaves. Let's talk about what happened to the slaves. Let's talk about what's happening with slavery. Yeah, there are many stories coming out of the Carolinas. And one of those stories goes all the way back to, one of the plantation owners was slapped in the face. We don't have to take it back that far. Just go back to the civil rights movement. Do you think this will cost you the election? With the Jim Crow laws and what happened with Rosa Parks. And I'm seeing videos of Black people being beaten and have dogs sicked on them. And the police are beating them. Well, yes, there are many stories that are coming out of, Georgia, North Carolina, South Carolina, Virginia, etc., Alabama. But one of them is let's go back to what happened on that bus when Rosa Parks refused to give up her seat. And that poor man had to stand there while she was sitting in that seat. This is the brainwashing in this country. And this goes beyond politics. You are taking the attention off of the group that is oppressed and occupied, and you are choosing in that moment to put the attention on the oppressor and the occupier. That says a lot about you, Kamala Harris. And you know what else that tells me? For all the people who push and say, you got to support this Black woman, which I didn't told you guys before, her father never said that he was Black. Her father has never said this, never said it. Why should we in turn be pressed to do something for her when she is sitting up here capping for white supremacy? Let's continue with the video. Aye.
And what happened that day, and then what has happened since. And I think what's critically important as we look at this moment is, one, acknowledging the tragedy of what has happened in Gaza in terms of the extraordinary number of innocent Palestinians who have been killed, and taking that seriously and speaking truth about that. In addition, of course, to what I said about what happened on October 7 in terms of 1,200 innocent Israelis being slaughtered, women being horribly raped.
There she goes again, repeating that lie. She continues, and this is another thing, by the way, this isn't something that's just known in independent media. Every time Kamala Harris continues to repeat that fabrication of the sexual assault on October 7th, which, by the way, there's still no evidence for that. Arab American voters hear that. Muslim American voters hear that as well. And that pushes them farther and farther away from Kamala Harris. See, that's the thing. People hear this and they think it's just us in independent media that are like, well, no, it's not. It's not just the Electric Intifada. It wasn't just Dropkick News. It wasn't just the Gray Zone who had covered this, I think, earlier on with Electric Intifada. It's not just us. You don't think the Muslim American community hears this lie too? She doesn't think Arab Americans don't hear this lie too? So she continues to repeat that lie. Like I said, it's almost like she wants to lose. And when I say that, people are like, oh, Sabs, why would she want to lose? Why would the Democrats want to lose? They don't give a fuck. They just want to fundraise. They just want to raise money. And honestly, they would rather lose and support Israel. They would rather support Israel unconditionally and lose, and then let Trump win, so that they can come back in 2028 and say, oh, see how horrible Trump was? So you got to put us back in now. This is a game. It's not even chess anymore. It's checkers, because it's so obvious how they move now. Let's let her finish here.
And then fast forwarding to today with the killing of Sinwar, this creates an opening that I believe we must take full advantage of to dedicate ourselves to ending this war and bringing the hostages home.
But it's not working so far.
You know what? Listen, as it relates to the issues in the Middle East and in particular in that region, it has never been easy. But that doesn't mean we give up, okay? It is always going to be difficult. It does not mean we give up. We can't give up.
But why is it always going to be difficult? Because there is one apartheid state in power. That is why it's always going to be difficult. You can't let this one state just run over these people, and I'm talking for generations, and expect them not to push back and expect them not to care. Like, these are the things that drive me crazy. It's just people seriously act like this is no big deal. Now, I want you to hear Sammy Hamdi, because Sammy Hamdi is very clear about this, about telling Muslim voters not to support Kamala Harris. And for those just joining, no, I'm not a Trump supporter. I'm voting for Jill Stein. I don't support the Democratic Party. I don't support the Republican Party. Last time I supported Democrats was Bernie. So I think people need to hear this, because it's incredibly important. And I can't say this enough. These people cannot be rewarded for genocide. They cannot. And I can't believe I even have to say this. And I look at what's happening with the Muslim voting community, and I look at them with such admiration, because they're willing to come together as a group and say, no, we're not going to support you. And I'm sitting back and I'm thinking about how those of us that are Black Americans could have done the same thing to the Democratic Party. And why haven't we had a movement where we could do that, where we say, no, we're not going to support you over whatever issue you want, whether it's reparations, whether it's the police state. That's a big one. Whether it's choosing to fund Israel and Ukraine instead of putting money back into communities here, particularly low income Black communities in the United States. Whatever, whether it's healthcare, whatever issue you want it over, I'm sitting back and I'm asking, why can't we do that? And I think a big part of it is the gatekeepers within the Black church. I think that's a big part of the problem. And the sororities and the fraternities, the Greek life system. I think there's a lot of older Black people that have been gatekeepers for a long time. You add Al Sharpton and his reporting ass too, because Al Sharpton was a snitch. There's been a lot of gatekeepers within our community that continue to hold us back from getting real progress, just so that those individuals in particular can continue to go to these galas and balls with people like Michelle Obama and Kamala Harris and Al Sharpton and all that kind of stuff. They get to pursue those opportunities. They get to live a certain lifestyle, and they do so by continuing to convince lower class and poor Black people to continue to support a party that does not have their best interests at mind for their community. And this needs to be a deeper conversation, because I've been paying attention and I know exactly what's going on. This is a problem. Is a big problem. That's why we can't have this type of organization, because of the people in the community, the older voices in the community that says we have to support them. We don't have to do a damn thing for the Democratic Party. The Democratic Party ain't doing nothing for us. And don't come to me with FDR did this and FDR did that. I was not alive when FDR was born. And if you have to go all the way back to FDR to tell me when the Democratic Party did something for Black people, that right there should let you know something. But listen to what Sammy Hamdi said, because I thought that this was important as well.
So the Zionists are terrified of this scenario, that Harris loses because she supported them, that Harris loses because she gave them unwavering support. And not only that, the Democrat advantage is broken because a party has now got 5% of the vote, not because the party has any interesting policies, not because the party itself is great, but because this party became the vehicle that people manifested their anger. And as a result, now this party is recognized as a third party. It's able to compete with the Democrats. When the Democrats sit around the table, they won't say, thank God we backed a genocide. They will say, was backing a genocide worth it? Was Israel worth it? Were the Zionists worth it? We took millions from them and still lost. We backed them and still lost. We supported them and still lost. When the Zionists go knocking on their door in 2 years to support them in the midterm elections, the Democrats will say, hang on a second, we took your money last time and still lost. We supported you last time and still lost. I'm sorry, you're not invincible in the way that you were before. We'll support you, but we need a Palestinian state. We'll support you, but we can't give you unwavering support. We'll support you, but we can't give you the level of support that you wanted, because we need to go and consult with this group of people who took to the ballot box. They never did before. They never used to vote properly before. They never used to engage before. But because they hated you so much, because we backed you, anything where you are involved forces these thousands to come out and vote and punish us. We don't want to be seen too close to you. You're not a political asset the way you were before. You're now a political liability because the president lost because she supported you. And now we're wrestling with a third party because people were so angry they went and broke our advantage. This is the point that the Zionists are worried about. And the reason why it upsets me when people say, go vote Harris again, is because the Zionists, I know that you're hearing from right-wingers that they want Trump to win, but they want Trump to win on the basis that Harris loses because of the economy. If Harris is going to lose because of Gaza, they'd prefer Harris to win. If Harris is going to lose because she supported Zionism, they would prefer Harris to win. The only reason they want Trump to win is they believe that if Trump wins, then maybe they might might have some support for Trump that perhaps Harris hasn't given. But if Harris is going to lose because of Zionism, they want Harris to win. They are willing to preserve their invincibility over losing it. And the proof is when they put the tweet out that 99 races run, 99 races won, and the amount of unprecedented money they spent to topple Jamal Bowman and to topple Cory Bush, and the amount of money they spent considering going against Rashida and subsequently not going against her because they didn't want to ruin that invincibility record. The Zionists, the worst case scenario for the Zionists is that Harris loses because she supported Gaza, because she supported the Zionists, and that the third party gets 5%, permanently breaking that advantage, because the Democrats, when they sit at the table, they will say, guys, we lost all of this not because of economic policies. We lost all of this not because of our social policies. We lost it all because we listened to a bunch of Zionists who gave us a lot of money and we still lost. We shouldn't have done it. We need to alter our course in the way that we go. And
that part right there, I think, is important for people to hear, because the reality is when people say, oh, well, third parties aren't going to win, we don't have ranked choice voting across the United States. The goal is to get the Green Party to that 5%. And I think that is the point. But also it goes beyond that. Abandon Harris has endorsed Jill Stein. They are abandoning Kamala Harris, period. Right. So we have Arab American voters and Muslim voters that have decided to say, no, we are not going to support genocide Kamala, killer Kamala, and genocide Joe. Right. We're not going to support this administration. We're not going to support Kamala Harris, even though she has Tim Walz as the running mate. She won't be with Joe Biden regardless. She said, we're not going to do it. We're not going to support that party. And at the end of the day, it's about solidarity. And I would never want you or anyone else to support the party, the administration that is funding and aiding a genocide, period. I don't care who it was. And you know what's really interesting? I am willing to bet you that if this was happening under Donald Trump, if Donald Trump was in office right now and the genocide was happening under him, I bet you people would be even more people would be sympathetic to the people who yelled at the pro-Palestinian protesters that were speaking out at Kamala Harris's events. I'm pretty sure those people would be even more sympathetic to the cause because it's the opposite party that it's happening under. Kind of hard to wash your hands of a genocide. I'm just saying. And you can wash your hands of a lot of different things. But washing your hands of a genocide? No. No. And I told you before about the numbers. So people are wondering, like, who could they pick up? I really do believe the focus right now is trying to replace those particular voters in the swing states with white women in suburban Detroit, in the suburban area of Philadelphia. I think that is the plan. Let's get out to the suburban white women. Let's let the white women come out and support me over the Roe v. Wade issue. So that way we won't have to worry about answering to the Muslim voters and we can just kind of push them aside. Now, my question to you is this. How long before they're willing to point their finger at black voters, which they say that they need to win? How long is it going to be for they're willing to point their finger at us and say, we don't need you anymore. Let's push you aside and bring in someone else. I think that's something to think about.